little background on the story of the goddess equation. I actually wrote, it was just published just a couple months ago in this new anthology, The Worlds of Philip as a Farmer, 4 Voyages to Strange Days, which is themed around Phil's early science fiction works. And this particular story is set in Farmer's 23rd century continuity. He had written a number of stories, the Father Carmody series, and then also several other standalone works that are also in the same continuity. There are references to different planets and things like that that cross over, and you can tell that they're part of the same universe. This particular one is a sequel to Farmer's story, Some Fabulous Yonder. It's a pretty, it hasn't been reprinted that many times. So I wanted to do something that was unique. And I wrote this mainly as a tribute story, not having any market for it or anything, while Phil was still with us. Back in 2004, I think I wrote this. And this was before I had permission to complete Phil's manuscript of The Song of Quasine, the third book in the Kokarsa series. And so I just wrote this pretty much for fun and as a tribute to Phil, and I wrote it, I wanted to just, I was starting a master's program in writing at the time, and I wanted to discipline myself and try to write something as true to Farmer's continuity as possible and do it as professionally as possible. But I just wrote it for fun, not really having a market for it. I sent it to Mike Croto, who ran Phil's website and still runs the Farmer website, pjfarmer.com, and because he was putting up fan fiction, hit a fan fiction page, and I thought, here you go, you know. And that was pretty much all I thought of it, and unknown to me, Mike printed the story out. Phil didn't go online a lot, so I didn't really expect him to even see it or know of its existence, but Mike, without telling me, printed it out and gave it to Phil to read. And the next thing I know, there was an update on the Farmer website with a little quote from Phil about how much he enjoyed the story. And that was huge to me back then, you know, still huge to me. So that, you know, I was super pleased with that, and I went on with my master's degree. And in the middle of that, I was co-editing Farmer File, the magazine of Philip as a Farmer, and that was when Mike Croto and Winscott Eckert uncovered the manuscript, the partial manuscript and outline to the Song of Quasine. And then at that point, I wrote out a pitch to Phil to complete that book, because that was one of my favorite series of his, and not really having that much hope that he would say yes, you can complete this. But apparently, the goddess equation was one of the factors that he liked it so much that he knew that I would do a good job with his continuity and not mess it up, and that was very important to him, I think. So the opportunity came up to publish it, an authorized version of it, through the Farmer estate for Worlds of Philip as a Farmer 4, and that's what this is. I did a little bit of revision in it because I'm a little bit of a better writer, I think, than I was back then. But so I'll just read a short excerpt from that, and I may read one more excerpt after that, very short one from another work. So this is about the protagonist is Detective Raspold. He works for the Federal Extraterrestrial, let me get the acronym right. I should know this, but I'm flustered up here. Basically, a group called FECAB that deals with extraterrestrial crimes. But he's just coming back from an assignment where he pretty much failed the assignment in Some Fabulous Yonder, Farmer's story. It was a great great science fiction tale. And so he's come back to Earth for reassignment, and he pretty much thinks that his career is taking a nosedive. And that's where this story starts. So I'll start one scene in with this. The city of Upper Copenhagen was a complex system of transport tubes and corridors. Raspol began his descent by taking a tube several levels down to a transport facility. There, he hailed a cab to drive him to an extra-city transport station that was located just above sea level. Luckily, he did not live too high in the city. Such levels were reserved for expensive restaurants, tourist traps, and the extremely rich. The fee cab agent had earned a reputation for thoroughness, insightfulness, and quick wit, but he still brought home a government salary. While the pay was steady, it did not afford him any luxuries. And now even his reputation had been called into question. Any immediate hopes of hunting down Nagay had been shelved. That was the criminal from Some Fabulous Yonder. Any hopes of hunting down Nagay had been shelved after his failure during the Voitomaton affair. And then there had been his inability to capture John Carmody, the Federation's former most wanted criminal, who was now undergoing rehab at Johns Hopkins after surrendering to authorities on Dante's Joy. That Raspol had been assigned to Athena's Office of Archives and Statistics spoke volumes about the current direction of his career. If he did not find a way to prove himself quickly, he would find his future sinking into a quagmire of electronic data analysis and pure boredom. He lit a cigarette as he exited the cab. He could understand why so many chose to risk their futures in frontier colonies like Diveboard. If his career headed in the way he feared, he might consider taking a jumper back to that planet. He could always set up shop as a PI for hire. After arriving at the terminal for outbound flights to the Athena complex, Raspol inserted a few C into a ticket booth and boarded a bus. In only a matter of minutes, he was debarking in front of the park-like grounds that housed the Federation's greatest technological achievement, Athena, the skyscraper-tall supercomputer. As an agent of FECAB, Raspol had limited access to the facility whenever a case required it. His boss, Richard Ali, had just granted him extended clearance. This was what gave Raspol pause. He could be here a long time. Athena towered over him like God's dirty toothpick. The black tower soared high into the mists that were beginning to break up as the morning sun rose into the sky. He looked around at the people swarming in and out of the building like ants, oblivious to the impressive feat of engineering. Og-Bujum, the Federation's older model protein computer, while huge, had possessed none of Athena's awe-inspiring architectural style. Bujum, now retired, had been housed in a blocky building that looked more like a giant warehouse than an important computer complex. While Athena was familiar to everyone in the Federation as the universal symbol of humanity's ingenuity, what few realized was that the supercomputer extended far beneath the Earth. In fact, even now, some 100 meters from the skyscraper, he was standing on buried protein circuitry. Taking another drag from his cigarette, Raspol joined the chain of workers entering the building. As he approached the monolithic structure, he glanced up at the triangle over cross symbol engraved into the sleek black surface above the main entrance. Passing through security took about 15 minutes. When he reported to the FECAB liaison to Athena, Raspol was surprised to find Diana Gress sitting in Agent Grimskold's office. "Lieutenant, have a seat," began Grimskold, his manner formal. "Have you had the honor of meeting Administrator Gress?" Of course, Raspol had not. Gress was senior administrator to Athena. Even the president of the Federation had to report to Gress on a regular basis, though protocol disguised their meetings as Gress reporting to the president. As a FECAB agent, Raspol knew this. Perhaps, if he played his cards right, this assignment would lead him farther than he could have imagined. Raspol placed his pack of cigarettes in his purse without withdrawing one. "No, I haven't, but I'm honored, Madam Administrator." Gress didn't rise from her seat or attempt to shake Raspol's hand. Instead, her classic Scandinavian features crooked into a wry smile. "Please," she pleaded, "if I hear that platitude one more time, I'm going to jump the tower." Raspol smiled back in amusement. "You mean jump off the tower," he thought. As if she read his mind, she grinned mischievously at him. "Diana will do." She turned back to Grimscold. "But let's get to the point, Herman. Tell Lieutenant Raspol why he's here." "To be frank," began Grimscold, "Chief Ali wanted to give you an assignment that would get you back down to earth. He feels that you may have lost your objectivity on your last case, that working with hard facts will get you back on track." Raspol fought to keep his poise. "This assignment is not a punishment," Grimscold added. "If you figure this one out, you may find yourself with more than just a few bonus C." "I couldn't care less about the glory," Raspol said, though he wondered how much truth there was in the statement. "It's the chase that keeps me motivated." "That's why Ali chose you for this one." Gress leaned forward. "Not to correct you, Herman." Raspol raised his thick eyebrows. "You picked this for me? You picked me for this, Madame Diana?" "Let's just say Athena did the legwork," she said. "I just asked her the question." He could hear the reverential capitalization in her tone. He made a mental note of this. While Athena was a marvel, to Raspol it was still just a machine, a very advanced abacus. The human soul ran much deeper. "Looking at you," she went on, "I'm not convinced she made a very good selection. You look like you've been sucking suborbital propellant. Your file says you're reliable, at ease under stress, driven to succeed, and generally only a moderate drinker. What's eating at you, Raspol? Can I count on you to get this job done?" That was more like it, Raspol thought. Gress now fit the profile of a corporate ladder climber, pumped up on power and ambition. How else does one get to the top of Athena? He heaved a heavy sigh. Of course, Gress already knew what was bothering him. The senior administrator not only would have read his current FECAB records, she would have questioned Ali and run Raspol's up-to-the-minute psychological profile through Athena. The computer would have told her that the stress of his encounter with Voitamaton and his subsequent grounding on Earth for the past month with interrogations by his superiors, as well as having no clear assignment, had left Lieutenant Raspol a very unhappy boy. While he was not usually a drinker, the past month was wearing on him. He had sulked in bars and in his apartment when the official representative of the Pupesian musician czar wasn't pounding his drum set in the apartment above, until great dark circles had formed under his eyes. Raspol, ugly from birth, was not looking any better these days. "You already know the answer to that question," he said dryly, "or I wouldn't be here." "Good," the administrator now smiled, and her tone had softened. "Herman?" Agent Grimscold steepled his hands on the desktop. Raspol imagined for a moment that he was praying to Athena. "The sensitivities of this case are extreme," Grimscold said. "You were to discuss it with no one." Raspol gave the FECAB liaison a tired look. "Of course." "I understand that's basic procedure," Grimscold continued. "But if word of this were to leak out, the entire framework of the Commonwealth would begin to shake. The consequences would be far-reaching." He clasped his fingers and darted a glance at Gress, who in turn glared at Raspol. "Athena is insane," Grimscold stated, "or very sick. For the past month, she has been giving inconsistent analyses. At first glance, they appear to be minor errors. Often the correct conclusion is reached, but the way in which the computer made the deduction was erroneous. Other times, the conclusion is an error, but the process of calculation seems infallible. Don't get me wrong, Athena is still functioning appropriately within the vast majority of her parameters. But the implications down the long road, well, I'm sure you understand the consequences to our society and the entire Federation were these trends to continue." Raspold thought he certainly could. Athena was the Federation's shining star. No other planet besides Earth, fed or non-fed, could claim such a prize. Were the supercomputer's accuracy and efficacy called into question, regardless of whether it was really malfunctioning, the lawsuits alone could bankrupt the Fed. Even worse, if the trends in Athena's ability continued, the Federation would lose its competitive edge in the galaxy. The computer had been used countless times to exploit situations with non-fed planets. Athena was a dealer you could not cheat. "I'm all ears." Raspold's deep and calming voice contrasted with the tension in Grimscold's tone. "But why is this a fee-cab matter?" Grimscold and Gress exchanged worried looks. Silence filled the pristine, white-walled office. The Federation Extraterrestrial Crimination Apprehension Bureau would be called in on an Earth-based case only if it involved a crime committed by an alien. God only knew there were few enough criminals left on Earth, at least those who were not business people or politicians. That was why Raspold had requested assignment on the frontier to begin with, and why it was ultimately frustrating for him to be idling his time away on Earth while his superiors decided whether he was competent or trustworthy enough for the job. But, he suspected, this case could change things. Finally, Grimscold continued. There have been 2 attempts on the administrator's life, both within the past 2 weeks. Normally, we'd run the facts through Athena, find a correlation between the 2 seemingly unrelated events. Actually, we've tried this. But Athena insists that with the data provided, no connection can be seen. This is unlikely, however. We've had no security breaches to Athena since she was built. That you know of, anyway, Raspold said. "So you say the murder attempts happened here, at the facility?" "The senior administrator lives here and seldom leaves the facility," Grimscold said. "It seems likely that those who tried to kill the administrator are the same criminals who sabotaged Athena. Knowing that Athena would likely reveal the conspirators, they altered Athena's reasoning functions to cover their tracks." "Wouldn't a simple diagnostic reveal the source of Athena's problems?" Raspold asked. Gress replied this time. "A layperson would think so, but Athena is made up of many interconnected protein brains. She is not your average quantum computer. But truth be told, there are diagnostics we have run that we'd hoped would ascertain the problem. Unfortunately, they've revealed nothing. We're continuing to make all our resources available to diagnose Athena's illness." "The assassins were both non-fed ETs," Grimscold said. "Norix Huatabi from Legacy and Fex Rigate from Arturo 9. No connections found, except that they're both from non-fed worlds that have so far resisted entering into contracts with the Federation. We're exploring that angle, of course." "If you have others on the case, why am I here?" "As I said," replied Gress, "Athena wanted you." Raspold sighed. "Athena does not want. She is a machine. Let's not forget that. Besides, I thought you couldn't trust it. Athena is a goose who lays not golden, but bad eggs." He noticed Diana Gress purse her lips at his remark. "We're not amateurs, Lieutenant Raspold. You are part of our diagnostic as well." Raspold frowned. "So the investigator is investigated?" "No, only that we want to see why Athena picked you. The results of your investigation could mean a lot to mine." "And to mine," Grimscold added. "Your job is to follow the assassination angle. You have a reputation for having good sources and good instincts. You are not afraid to crawl into the dark and dirty places to get to your goal. I want you to find out what you can about Norix Huatabi and Fex Rigate, who they are and who they are working for, what it might benefit them, if you'll excuse me, Diana, to see the administrator dead. You'll have access to as much data as you need, full clearance." Raspold doubted that very much, but he said nothing. As he stood up to leave the office, Diana Gress cleared her throat. "I understand you paint, Lieutenant Raspold." Raspold stopped, but did not acknowledge the woman. "I want you to paint a portrait of me. It will help you relax so that you'll be able to focus on the case at hand. Will you do that for me?" "I'll need you to pose for me." "I don't have time," she said, "but here's a holopic of me." She handed him a tiny green pyramid. I only paint nudes. She smiled. I know. So Meteor House has Worlds of Philip as a Farmer 4 for sale at the Meteor House table. Pick that up.